Шановні колеги, ми
Dear colleagues, we continue our working day, and the topic of the next event is 57 activists are detained in Minsk. Our guests are Svetlana Valko, Partnership on Human Rights and Youth House, and Alexandra Demichuk, Helsinki Union Human Rights and Civil Solidarity Platform, and also Simon Papalashvili, who is by Skype, and he is the head of International Partnership on Human Rights, and Dimitrios Vostopoulos, also by Skype, president of International Federation on Human Rights, Andrew Anderson, Frontline Defenders, and Tamila Tasheva will be present, and Crimea SOS, and also the representatives of International Partnership for Human Rights, Maria Kvitsinska, and the deputy head of Crimea SOS, Andriuk. Svetlana Valko is given the floor first. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today, we organized this briefing in order to express concern, as they usually do in such cases, but also to bring information to the public in our country, in Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Georgia, Armenia, and also throughout the European Union, and what happened today and what is going on in Belarus. On the 25th of March, they planned to have a peaceful meeting to commemorate Volk and to mark independence of the country, but the authorities didn't provide proper place, only and then they started massive attack on the peaceful population and the leaders of this march, and also other representatives of civil society. And today they detained 57 defenders of human rights at Vesna office, and also these were representatives of people from different countries, Georgia, Russia and other countries. These representatives, they were not just detained. A special force unit broke into Vesna office, and everyone was on the ground, face down, and they carried out a search and they detained everyone who were present there, and they didn't provide an explanation, and they accompanied 57 people to Pervomaisky police station. And no one made any enforcement, and OMON special force representatives didn't explain why they did it. And all those who were detained, now they were released. That's why the observers and right defenders who just wanted to see how this march was going on, they were just detained without any reason, and without any reason they were held throughout the march that started at 2 p.m. and then they were released when everyone understood that they won't be present there. And this is a pattern that we see in the attack on other peaceful protesters who came to the meeting, and now they are detained. They're being detained in the streets. They are seized. They use different type of violence toward them, and they send them to different police stations. And we believe that the majority of the observers were detained with the specific goal to prevent proper monitoring of peaceful gathering, and also to monitor to prevent them to monitor the actions of law enforcers. Also among the detained were the representatives of monitoring mission that was organized by International Partnership for Human Rights, and there were representatives of different nationalities and different organizations. They came to the city to observe this peaceful gathering and to observe the actions of the authorities. And both of them were detained, and now they are by Skype. This is Maria Kutsinska and Evgeny Andriuk. They are both the observers on the mission, and they are also Crimea SOS participants, and we would like to give them the floor in order to tell about these events and about the detention and the conditions where they were held. Zhenya, Masha, please. Good afternoon. We are glad to greet you from Minsk. Here it is raining and it is cold. We were detained today at about 1:45, and this was the moment when we, as representatives of and Vesna representatives, they gathered to discuss the plan to monitor the action, and also several observers and journalists were in the office, and they took part in the discussion of the plan of monitoring and planning of further actions to monitor the action. And human rights defenders in Belarus, they do it together with Vesna and Helsinki Committee, and all the observers had proper documents. They were registered before as observers, and they provided the papers to police, so here in Belarus. And we were attacked by a OMON and placed on the floor face down, and then the most ugly thing was these 15-20 minutes when people broke out in the office and they didn't explain anything. And then they held us for about an hour. They didn't allow us to use mobile phones and to tell our colleagues what was going on with us. They didn't provide any charges or explanations. And they allowed us to take medicines or to drink if you want to. And in some time, they brought us in a big sports hall. We were about 80 people. There were human rights defenders and other people who were at the meeting, or there were just people from the street. And at 3, all the human rights defenders were released, and several activists remained. And then the activists were brought 10 or 15 to Pervomaisk, and also people are in different were in different facilities throughout the city. And as we understand now, unfortunately, at 80 or 90% of observers were at Vesna office. That's why we were not able to carry out monitoring what was going on in the city. And our colleagues and us, we will continue to monitor the situation in the city. But we didn't see the action, the meeting itself. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague. I would like to add that throughout the city, the police cars, they came and they take people who are in the center of the city. And when they brought us in a bus to the police station, we saw at crossroads that there is a lot of police there, and some roads are closed, and the center of the city is partly blocked, and there is mass detention of people. And our detention, it was coordinated action in Vesna office, and it was. They knew that there will be meeting and there will be a lot of people, and they planned this detention in order to prevent these people to come and see the meeting. Thank you very much. I want to cite one of the protesters who is still not detained. He said that if there was a balcony of Lukashenko, maybe on the rope there will be dirty trousers on this rope. And other observers who were not detained, Belarus mission and international, they report that now and in the course of March, there were massive arrests and unsanctioned arrests, and they are still ongoing, so they are just arbitrary detentions. And now I would like to give the floor to Alexander Demilchuk, who is now represent Civil Solidarity Platform and also Helsinki Human Rights Union. Please join us.
It's kind of a very big improvisation, what we are doing today, together with our colleagues abroad, because nobody awaited this. It was a fine Saturday in Kiev, and everybody was close to their families, and we didn't expect that this would come. Maybe not so much we didn't expect, because during the previous weeks, we witnessed how Belarusian authorities again started to use violence and persecution against participants of public assemblies and activists and journalists, etc. Because some of us had kind of illusion maybe that during previous two years that regime in Belarus became more liberal and more moderate. But in the meantime, a lot of wise people were saying that it's not like this and it's not true. And now we saw it, because during the last 2 weeks, if we are not even considering today, more than 250 persons have been arrested on administrative charges, and they received like 10, 11, 12, 14 days of administrative detention. Also, starting from day after tomorrow, day after yesterday, I'm very sorry, 26 people have been detained on criminal charges. And some of them, like activist Levanets, he was beaten during the detention process, and he got brain trauma and broken nose, and it was done in the face of his children. So it's very bad developments which are happening now in Belarus in general with regard to freedom of expression and freedom of public assemblies and freedom of movement and other civic freedoms. But also another issue is that our international colleagues, people who went to Belarus to support and to oversight the meetings there, they were also detained, and they were detained in the most most well-known organization, human rights organization in Belarus, Vesna Center. And this is very tragic because it shows another regress in the human rights record of Belarus, and for us as for Ukraine, for me as now I represent Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, the biggest human rights organization in Ukraine. For us it's very tragic that our closest neighbor is I'm sorry for translators, that our closest neighbor is following the path of bad record in human rights. And this is very important for all of us, for all the Eastern Partnership region, that we try to follow democratic trend with regard to human rights, and that we try to oppose dictatorship which tries to influence on us from the Russian side, I mean, and that we try to present a standard of democracy inside of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries. In this regard, Belarus and Azerbaijan still need a lot of work. Ukraine also, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. I want to give the floor to Dimitris Christopoulos, who is the president of International Federation of Human Rights, and who gives also the information and his position, because among detained people there were also 2 French journalists and other representatives of FIDIASH. Dimitris?
Hello from Paris. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
That's great. So, I happen to be in Paris because right now we are holding our international bureau meeting, and so I'm not with my family this nice Saturday morning, as you said, but this is the least. The most is what happens in Belarus. The most is what happened today in Minsk, and to be honest, we have not been that surprised, given the fact that we have been intensively monitoring the regime there. But on the other hand, we need to acknowledge the fact that this is the first serious crackdown after 2010. So such an aggressive answer to peaceful and lawful demonstration is something that we have been used to by a regime which actually wants to show its force and its power, but actually it shows its insecurity and its weakness, because accepting the right to assembly is a sign of a stable democracy, which obviously is not the case with Belarus. So people were protesting lawfully, reasonably, peacefully against a decree which actually is taxing unemployment, a decree which actually questions the so-called social-friendly orientation of the Minsk regime. You cannot task it. But whatever. And after all, what people are asking for, it is exactly the withdrawal of this decree. So actually, I think that the regime here shows its paranoia by banning this social protest, because it's afraid that this social protest might meet a political protest after all. But you know what? With such reactions, people get stronger. With such reactions, people understand that the socially friendly facade of the regime is fake. People understand that after all, what are we talking about? It is an authoritarian model of state capitalism in 2017. So, to be honest, once could say that, okay, after all, what is 10 days in prison? What is 15 days in prison? But people need to know that when we are talking about administrative detention in this country, we are talking about torture. We are talking about inhumane and degrading treatment of the individuals. And this is what people must understand. So it's not simply 10 days in prison and then bye-bye. It is 10 days in a situation of illegal, inhumane incarceration, according to all standards put by the European Convention for Human Rights and so on. So we need to be obvious here, and we need to understand that even if human rights defenders have just been released today, people who demonstrate will still face the possibility of administrative detention. So we need to send a message, and the message is the following. First, to the Belarusian authorities, showing your force in this way shows your weakness. Second, to the European Union, we have have been extremely critical of the fact that the European Union has lifted the sanctions to the Belarusian authorities. And we have been proven right. We have been proven right, because what we expected was a concrete roadmap with all concrete guarantees coming from the regime. This did not come, and obviously now what we are facing is exactly the symptom of an imprudent way of behavior coming from the European Union. So we have a message also for the EU and the international community. Act accordingly to some principles. Act accordingly to some values. Act in a prudent way, because if we do not act, the worst is yet to come. This is what I would like to share with you, and I apologize that I have to leave you because I am between a meeting of the International Bureau of the International Federation for Human Rights, and I will not be able to continue being with you.
Thank you very much, Dimitrios. And I also want to give the floor to the director of Frontline Defenders, FU, whose employee today was detained also among their observers and monitors, together with their Belarusian representatives and Vesna Center. Andrew, please.
Good afternoon. Firstly, let me thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'm only sorry I can't be physically there with you, although I have to say the sun is shining here in Edinburgh. We were very pleased that the human rights defenders, including our own colleague Masha Chichkenkova, were released in the last hour or so. But we remain concerned that they and those who had gone to monitor the protests in Minsk were detained in such an aggressive and arbitrary way. And it's clearly an attempt to intimidate and prevent and silence those who are monitoring the policing of protests and demonstrations in Belarus. And it's a key marker for the behavior of repressive governments when they go after independent journalists and human rights defenders to try and close down reporting of what they're doing. It's an indicator that they intend to use severe violence, bloody force against protesters. And this is something that we all have to take with great seriousness. I agree very much with our friends from FEDH that this should have consequences in terms of the political decisions of the European Union and other international organizations in terms of the approach to the government in Belarus. We need to continue to try and work to monitor and document the scale of repression inside the country, and I want to pay tribute to the volunteers and especially the younger people who were involved in and who were detained today and who are committed to trying to document the human rights situation inside the country, and we will continue to try and support them in doing that. So from our side, it's a question of we will not be intimidated. It's clear that's the attempt of the authorities in Belarus. We refuse to be intimidated. We will continue to support human rights defenders inside Belarus, and we'll continue to document the actions of the Belarus government and seek to hold those responsible to account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. And I also want to give the floor to Simon Poposhvili, who's the project manager of International Partnership for Human Rights from Brussels. Simon?
Thank you, Svetlana. I would like to start by thanking Ukraine Crisis Media Center for allowing us to hold this press briefing at their premises, despite short notice. Obviously, we could not do such an event for obvious reasons in Minsk. So just a few points. Such crackdown is not new in Belarus, but the scale of the repressions that we are witnessing now is quite serious. And I don't remember in the recent history of Belarus that so many people have been detained in masses in such a short period of time, including many foreign nationals, etc., etc. This kind of behavior requires very strong response from international community, and I would like to simply reiterate also what a colleague from FIDH said, that it was very much premature that EU and its member states have lifted sanctions against Lukashenko regime. And I would like to call to international community, including the European Union, that they should reconsider sanctioning the regime once more, because what is going on is unacceptable, and the only way to stop this is through very strong unconditional reaction from outside. And also I would like to call the representatives of European media to provide comprehensive coverage of what is going on in the country. Unfortunately, local press has very limited possibilities right now. They are obviously targeted themselves. Therefore, presence of international media, international journalists is very important, and it's very important that we all work together to disclose scale of violations which are taking place minute by minute in Belarusian capital.
Thank you, Simon, for joining us today and for your position. Мы сегодняшней пресс-конференции также...
Also, by this press conference, we would like to express our solidarity and to spread this solidarity to Belarus human rights defenders and also to show that there are many human rights violations in our countries. And I would like to give the floor to Tamila Tasheva, Crimea SOS organization. Please, Camila, you're given the floor. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to thank you once again and the Ukraine Crisis Media Center that actively react on the situation and allowed us to conduct this press conference. And for me, I am one of the coordinators of this, and for me it was a shock to know that our colleagues Maria Kvitsinska and Ms. Andrenyuk, who were on the international mission and in the framework of international organizations, that they were detained. And I would like to tell you about other thing. Our Belarus colleagues and Russian human rights defenders and the journalists who are not able to work in their own countries. They came to help here in Ukraine to develop democratic processes that were started actively during the Revolution of Dignity. A lot of people from Belarus were in Maidan in 2013, 2014. A lot of Russian human rights defenders and journalists came to Maidan, and they were in our country. Masha and Zhenya, two of my colleagues, they take active part in the activity of the organization. They are involved in the process of de-occupation of Crimea, concerning provision of legal help to people who are now suffering. And we, Ukrainian human rights defenders, we should not be outside of this. And as Sveta said, these are processes on post-Soviet area. and we all belong. And tomorrow there will be a solidarity action together with Belarus activists, all those citizens who fight the regime, and all the events that are there. So 6 p.m. please, everyone who can, please come to the embassy of Belarus. And also, I would like to say that those human rights activists from Ukrainian and international organizations and the journalists who came there to observe the incidents of human rights violation, they will leave in several days. But those people who work there permanently, Nastya Laiko, the representative of Belarus Center that is called Vyasna, Raisa Mikhailovskaya, representative of Belarus Documenting Center, they will stay there, and many other human rights defenders will remain there. That's why we should pay constant attention to what is going on in our neighboring country, and we should help them. And I would like to thank them again for their courage, for their work. And I call on activists to come to Belarus embassy at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So this is the end of press briefing. You can contact us through social networks. You can find all the speakers. You can visit our sites. And you can support Belarusians online or by actions. And we can stress that today's press conference is not only about detention of human rights defenders and journalists. Those who were released from Pervomaisk police station, they saw that in the territory of this facility, people are standing and they are their rights are violated and suppressed violently. That's why you should remember about those people who express the will of people and the peaceful protesters. Long live Belarus. Thank you, dear colleagues. This is the end of press briefing. Thank you.